Consumers want to know the facts about the products they buy, but America's agricultural landscape is not easy to navigate. Between different companies, scientific advancement, government regulations, advertisement campaigns, and an unhealthy amount of myth and misconception, anyone would be hard-pressed to make sense of it. That's where Real Ag comes in, from the producers who make your food, to the store where you buy the final product, and everything in between. This is Real Ag. Now, here's your host, Kyle Bauer.
At the grocery store, you may have noticed produce marked as organic. But what makes it organic, and where does it come from? Also, what standards and regulations go into qualifying a farm or crop as organic? We'll talk to some organic farmers and ask all these questions and more on this Organic Farms episode of Real Ag.
Production of Real Ag is made possible in part by an underwriting grant from
the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by farmers.
What is organic agriculture?
I think it's, for the general public, they think of it as farming without the use of synthetic chemical fertilizers and pesticides. But it's more complex than that. It's regulated by USDA's National Organic Program. There are comprehensive standards that not only address pesticide use, but through what's called an organic system plan. An organic operation lays out their soil fertility, soil management program, pest control programs. It's in many ways more based on agroecological principles to control pests and provide fertility, management of manure. And there are, the standards require extensive documentation of the production practices, the grain handling practices, and documentation that goes along with grain as it moves through the marketing system.
When were the standards put into place for organic farming?
Organic organizations started developing standards in the probably starting in the mid-70s. I think USDA's National Organic Production Act, I believe it was passed in 1992 and implemented beginning in about 2000.
Are chemicals never used in organic farming?
By and large, yes. There are some biological insecticides that occur naturally that are permitted sometimes on a restricted basis. Probably the most common one is BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, and it's often, it's a insect control that you can use like on plants in the cabbage family. It applies, rain washes it off the next rain. It is the same naturally occurring bacteria in like what you hear about in BT corn, except it's not genetically bred into every cell of the plant.
Are GMOs prohibited from organic farming?
Genetically engineered seeds are prohibited in organic systems, and so and there's really no need for them, particularly with regard to Roundup, because and those chemicals are prohibited anyway, and so they're not a part of organic production systems. It's not a handicap for organic production systems, and it's one of the reasons why people select organic foods, because they want to stay away from the genetically engineered crops.
Where do the seeds come from for organic farming?
The standards say that we should use organic seed unless it is not commercially available. And most of the seed, particularly in field, I think in all crops, are organically produced. So we use seeds that are, they're not genetically modified. There are some seed companies producing hybrid seed corn, which used to be the most difficult to obtain because farmers aren't going to produce their own hybrid seed corn. But we've got good selection of like hybrid seed corn. Wheat and soybeans are not so much hybridized, and farmers will find varieties, and there are companies that are producing varieties under organic production protocols, and so farmers can fairly readily source the organic seeds they need. And some will use public varieties and retain and use their own seed.
What are the benefits of organic farming?
Well, you know, you're not eating toxic chemicals, and that I'm not spraying some kind of insecticide if I have an insect problem. Just that I've kept toxic chemicals out of the whole process, you know, even from the cleaning part of it, you know.
If it's built on a ecologically based production systems, it'll be much more diversified, and it can reduce, done that way, it can reduce some of the input cost associated with fertilizers and pesticides. Oftentimes the seeds we use are significantly less expensive because they are not genetically engineered. So there can be benefits on the cost of production side, and those reduction in production costs often also come without the need as much credit to purchase inputs. And then there are price premiums on the marketing side of it. And some of the other benefits, you know, we don't, organic farmers do not put at risk runoff of high applications of fertilizers or the use of pesticides running into our streams and so forth.
What standards would I have to meet to become an organic farmer?
Oh yeah, fill out a lot of paperwork and come up with some money and just, you know, jump through all the hoops, be inspected.
You'd apply through a organic certifying agency. You would complete what they call an organic system plan. It's an overall comprehensive plan of your farming operation. If it's wholly organic, it'll cover that, but it would also cover, some farms are partially organic and partially more conventional. And the organic system plan would set out how you segregate the production and grain handling and marketing of that. So it's a comprehensive plan. The transition period is 3 years from the last use of a prohibited material until you can sell a crop. It's a minimum of 3 years. You also have to have extensive records on your field production, you know, planting dates, harvesting dates, quantities that come off, where it goes into storage, marketing records in terms of, you know, shipments, bills of lading, invoices, things of that sort. And then each year there's an annual inspection where a trained organic inspector comes out to the farm, reviews your records, takes a look at the fields, takes a look at your grain storage facilities, and does a fairly comprehensive overview of the farm.
Is organic farming less or more productive than conventional farming, and does it take more land?
There may be some reduction on the high yield end side of it, but well-managed, well-operated organic farms can achieve good yields. One of the big differences is the more diversification. And so a farm, you know, if a typical corn and soybean farm was transferring to organic, they would probably need to build in some small grains such as wheat to break up weed cycles, start to create a more diverse rotation. They would also need to include some cover crops. Many organic grain farmers also have beef cattle and will incorporate alfalfa, other forage legumes as a part of the operation. So the acres compared to a conventional corn and soybean acres, the relative acres of corn and soybeans will drop and be made up by other crops. Some of those, such as wheat, would be a cash grain crop. Some of the forage crops may feed cattle, or they may be sold. We have some organic farmers that sell alfalfa hay, for instance. Some of those acres may be just used for soil building, that there's not a cash grain sold off of it. The crop, if there's a mix of forages and other species in a cover crop, they may be just used for soil building purposes.
Finding substrate, I guess I'd have more options. If I wasn't certified organic, I'd have more options finding substrate, and probably cheaper substrates. And there's a whole world of like ag waste, especially up in Wisconsin. There's a big company that sells all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I'm somewhat strapped by, has the crop been GMO'd? Is it a GMO corn product, or being able to find something that's not GMO? And that's probably going to be the death of me eventually, organic-wise, just because every ag product I'm using came from some GMO source. When will I finally not be able to find sunflower GMO'd?
Does organic food carry a higher risk of food poisoning?
I don't think so. And the biggest risk would come from using livestock manure as a soil amendment for organic production. And the organic standards have fairly precise requirements on the use of manure. Like on vegetable crops, where a vegetable would have contact with the soil, any use of manure has to first be composted to specific thresholds of temperature, times that it's turned, so that pathogens are destroyed. Like in grain production, if there are food grains such as wheat, or it could be food soybeans, or for that matter, there's also markets for food corn and for food grain sorghum. And the requirements there are the manure has to be applied, I think it's at least 90 days before a crop is harvested. So that's that's a grain crop where the grain does not touch the ground. So the contact is fairly limited anyway. And there's an extensive period of time where the manure can be, incorporated in the soil, pathogens, broke down in the biological process of the soil and so forth. So I think it's probably been 10 or more years ago, there was a E. coli, I think it was associated with organic strawberries. The standards changed after that to make sure that the use of manure did not present a threat. Also, on organic vegetables, standards require that there be water tests that evaluate the water in terms of any pathogens or contaminants, so that contamination doesn't occur inadvertently through washing vegetables and so forth.
Well, mushrooms are a whole different deal, and I think it's really more a matter of scale, because if you have a big business where you have employees doing all your work and you're not even out there on the front lines, then it can easily get out of control where the washing and packaging isn't being done, like you're not there watching every step. So I think really small and medium farmers have that advantage. I mean, I'm here looking at everything that goes through. I'm the one packaging a lot of it. It's all going through me. It's like this stuff needs just to be dried or even thrown away. And so and then as for I'm here looking at my grow rooms every day, and so I think that there's an advantage for being small.
What's the difference between certified organic or other organic food?
Crops or if food products have an organic label, they should be labeled. The USDA requires that they be certified. There is one exception, and that's for farms that raise or sell less than 5,000 in gross sales of organic product. They can be exempt, but they are required to complete the organic system plan and maintain the same kind of records that they would even if they were certified. Most, if they're going to be selling anything organic, are going to go ahead and go through the certification process so they can put that certified label on their product.
Is the Organic Farms Producers Association a group that people could reach out to if they wanted to start their own organic farm?
Yes, we get calls regularly, 3 or 4 a month is what I get. And there are some of the certifying bodies and others will get some calls. We've got some educational materials we can email farmers. We can put them in touch with some of the certification organizations. And we'll, visit with them by phone as much as they want. There's a tremendous amount of information online on organic production. USDA is developing more educational materials, and other organizations are developing more materials. We do some workshops each year on organic transition, marketing, and so forth. So I think if people need a place to start, we can help them get started. We can refer them to other resources. There's actually quite a lot of help out there.
How big is organic farming in the state of Kansas?
The organic farms are scattered, organic grain farms are scattered across Kansas. I forget what the USDA statistics recently were. I think there's some 60,000 acres under organic production. But what we have in Kansas is small in comparison to Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, I think even Missouri. And I'm sure there are several reasons. Those states tend to have smaller farms and more farms generally. I think that's part of it. And I'm sure there's some other reasons. But in the region, the acres and number of farms in Kansas is relatively low compared to surrounding states. Nebraska has a lot more acres, and I think more farmers that are doing organic.
Does organic farming use less water?
We have a fair number of members in western Kansas. Some are totally dry land, some mostly irrigated, some partially irrigated, some partially dry land. They're concerned about the cost and availability of water, and we see them taking steps now to reduce their dependence on irrigation. The way they're doing some of that, part of it is with the more diversification, using more crops that utilize less water. So getting away from so much corn, more wheat. We've seen the market and the interest in grain sorghum increasing. So we see some of our members producing more grain sorghum. We've got members that are growing more millet, which is a shorter season, more drought tolerant crop. In the last 3 years, we've had some members that are starting to grow field peas for grain, for human consumption. It's another shorter season crop, late winter, early spring, that would utilize less water. There's also interest in trying to, and in limited rainfall areas, it's a bigger challenge, but improve soil so that it retains and holds on to water more effectively. So those are, people are thinking about how they're going to farm with less water and maybe under warmer conditions. So, we're proud of our members taking steps to see how they can move in that direction.
Tell us a little bit about what crops you grow here.
Well, obviously I grow mushrooms, and then I grow a lot of sunflowers and tomatoes, peppers, a few other vegetables. But mushrooms are 75% of my sales. And then I'm just whittling back vegetables slowly every year, doing more mushrooms. I have grown a lot of melons, grow some garlic, some sweet corn, but really, trying to grow more mushrooms and less vegetables.
Does the mushroom seem to be expanding in people's wants and needs for it?
Yeah, it's maybe tapered off a little bit, but it's more that there's very little competition. It's like a niche thing that I have. I don't know if it's easier work, but it's inside work, so I'm not, in the summertime, it's nice to go into work in the air conditioning, and it's something I can do all year round. It's something that I invested a lot of money into, so at one point in time, I might have invested more money for tractor implements to grow more vegetables, and instead I grew mushrooms. And so it's just something that I've been slowly building up.
What's the benefits of the mushroom?
Well, I mean, every mushroom has a medicinal purpose, or action, and then mushrooms are also have protein. They have a lot of vitamins, and actually they're one of the 6 superfood groups according to this guy on PBS. I can't remember his name, but I mean it's actually one of the 6 superfood groups all by itself. It has 2 ways that it fights cancer. So like shiitakes have anti-cancer effects. Oysters can cut your cholesterol. Hericium is helpful in regenerating nerve tissue. And some of these things we don't even know about because or else we have to translate from China, because that's where a lot of the work is done on medicinal mushrooms, is in China.
What different types of mushroom do you grow here?
Well, we grow a lot of oysters. So we have the gray oyster. We have the gray oyster, gray dove, and then we have the white oyster, which is pohu, and then the namiko, which is the orange one down here. We also grow shiitake, but I keep all my mushrooms on cultures, on tubes, and so I've got 17 different mushroom types. I'm not growing them all. I mean, 3 of them are like ones I've never grown. I'm just kind of holding them for somebody else, and I'm going to give them back. But at any one time, I'm probably only growing 6 or 7 at a time, depending on the season,
Can you explain what a substrate is?
Well, the substrate is what the mushroom grows on. It's like the soil part, like comparable to a vegetable in soil. And so, the substrate is, this stuff that the mushroom is growing on. Well, the mushroom is just the fruiting body, but then all this white stuff, that's the mycelium. I mean, most of your mushroom life is spent as mycelium. And there's like basically what I'm doing is just growing lots and lots of mycelium, and then the fruiting body is a really brief little point in time, trying to make some spores and keep the whole thing going.
Can you explain what cost share is?
Cost share would just be the government has had in their farm budget, they've set aside money to help organic farmers recoup cost. Because why should organic farmers have to pay to become organic? It should be all the other farmers documenting when they sprayed the toxic chemicals. We're not spraying toxic chemicals, but it doesn't work that way. So everybody else gets to just do what they want, and then an organic farmer has to document what they did, the whole process, when they added inputs and all that stuff. So the cost share helps pay for all that work and the cost that it takes to become organic.
How can I make sure if something is labeled organic that it actually is?
Well, there's going to be listed on the label who the certifier is. So you should be able to go back to the certifier. And everything is, it gets really difficult with vegetables because, you're supposed to really do lot numbers and be able to, basically they're going to be able to say, I saw that you saw some of this, you sold some of this product in August of this year. Where did it come from? What field was it in? You could be able to trace it back to where it came from. Where was the seed that you bought for this, And so it's a little more difficult with mushrooms and vegetables. It's an ongoing process. It's not like there's a field of soybeans, we took it out on this day, and we planted it on this day. It's just this ongoing thing. So when they ask me what types of mushrooms are you growing on December 21st, I just have to go off my head that I know what's being grown, and so.
Organic farmers and their crops have to adhere to strict guidelines and processes to qualify themselves as organic. We hope this episode has given you a better understanding and appreciation for organic farms and the crops they produce. Remember, If you want to check out this and more episodes of Real Ag, go to SmokyHillsTV.org. For the Real Ag crew, I'm Kyle Bauer, and this has been Real Ag.
Production of Real Ag is made possible in part by an underwriting grant from
the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by farmers.